What's cooking, folks? Vermillion Phoenix here, and today we're jumping into some Orcs Must Die 3. We are Rift Lord running today, which means we're going through Rift Lord level by level. This is going to be the second level, the Great Room, and this is your introduction to two gates, go breaks that no longer care about your feelings, and making sure that you set things up correctly the first time. There'll be more about that when we actually get into the level, but this game was given to me by Robot Entertainment at no cost, so, just so you guys are aware, I didn't pay for this, and I will have it forever. Ultimately, this is thanks to you, though. I appreciate everybody showing the channel love for Unchained, and now Orcs Must Die 3. Without any of you guys here, I wouldn't be here, and this wouldn't even matter. But, again, thank you for showing up. Thank you for watching the videos, and let's get on to some orc bashing, I guess. So one of the things that I want to get people used to is the fact that there's a bestiary when you step into a level. It tells you what sort of threats you're going to be up against and tells you the weaknesses, also what their strengths are if they have any. So that said, if you are the kind of person that has a favorite trap and likes to use it all the time, and you run into enemies that happen to be strong against it, I love fire traps, for instance, and then fire fiends show up and they just ruin my day. So it's not even that you can't have fire traps in your loadout when they're there. It's just that you need to be aware of, when they're coming, that you have a backup plan, or just layer your traps in such a way that they don't pose a significant threat. That said, if you do not pay heed to the strengths of the enemies that you'll be running into, for instance, dropping a ton of arcane traps when you're dealing with mages, you're going to have a bad time. And if you, take a bunch of traps that don't take advantage of heavy enemies' elemental weaknesses, you're still going to have a bad time. So I'd recommend just trying to have a couple of weakness-oriented traps, or pack the biggest, most efficient damage-dealing combination you can think of, and, make sure your player is doing everything they can to ramp that damage up good. But, yeah, I'm going to hop out of this level eventually and do some changes to my spell book before I get back in. So we're going to jump forward, thanks to the magic of editing, and get to my first loss on this level, and we'll talk about it. So here we go. I was freestyling this a little bit, decided to take some new weapons to try out their abilities after I had dumped some skulls into them. And, we were going to try to go for a speed clear at the gate, just orc things. And I figured after the gate was cleared, we would just sell everything and we'd get a nice little quick cash grab, move over to the next gate, and we would be doing great. I was wrong, though. I was very wrong.
Enemies are preparing to breach one of our gates. They've broken through a gate.
So here's the issue with my loadout. If you weren't aware, this will be a quick explanation. The Chain Lightning Staff does decent damage per shot, but it has a low rate of fire. So it's good at taking out heavy enemies, but it's really bad for clearing trash. It fires slowly, and that means that if you're killing light enemies, you're doing a lot of overkill damage, which for people that don't play a lot of RPGs, basically means your DPS is high, but you're wasting most of it. That means that ultimately you would be a lot better using the Blunderbuss here, and I think that's ultimately what I switched to once we're finished this part. And the other surprising thing is I found out that I don't get enough time to sell anything. So this is wonderful. When this second gate opens, the first gate is still open, which I was entirely not expecting, and you now have to deal with everything with most of your cash trapped in a couple of caves and an arrow wall that you no longer have any ability to use. So Rift Lord will try to do this to you a lot, and it's one of the things that forces you to replay a lot of the maps, mainly because you'll have to figure out where these sort of tricky go breaks are and get past them in a way that hopefully won't, just allow the orcs to straight up bulldoze Rift like what happened to me here. So The correct thing to do is to build a safer set of barricades near the rift, and I literally just, after that, I was like, all right, I'm restarting. I figured out where the cinch was in how I set up, and we're going to do it better here. So I'm going to jump forward a little bit, and, you know, we'll get to the setup that I use here. So now we're sort of keeping it classic. We got the souped up Blunderbuss, we got your ice amulet, we got your trap reset trinket, or your dwarven trap trinket, whatever you want to call it. You know, it's all good, but we about to kill some orcs now. We got our barricades set up, and you can do this a couple of different ways. You can even move those barricades a bit closer forward, but the main thing here is just to make sure that we are doing a couple things. We're bottlenecking the orcs, and that's important, at least in this version of the game, because the way that enemies work now is they sort of body block each other. So if an enemy is in front of another enemy, they have to walk around them, they can't go through them. And this works to your advantage for a number of different things. It means that if you make tight spaces for enemies to walk through, they automatically basically become slower. If you know, you do that, like, it's what's a good analogy for it? You've ever seen 300, or you know the story about the Battle of Thermopylae? It's a situation where superior numbers basically become ineffective. If the orcs were all running at your rift from 360 different angles, it'd be difficult for you to stop all of them at once. But when they're all coming from one direction, you basically only have to aim your damage in one direction, and that makes your aiming a lot better. That makes your traps more efficient, because you only have to place them in places where you can guarantee that almost everything is going to cross their I was about to say terror radius, and I don't know why. Probably listening to too much Dead by Daylight stuff. But it's crossing their damage zone, and the damage zone is the area that the trap sort of triggers and is able to deal damage in. Some traps have a trigger zone that is smaller than their damage zone. Some traps have a damage zone and trigger zone that's exactly the same. There's also a trigger delay on certain traps where it'll take a certain amount of time before they actually start firing. But that's on some more advanced trap mechanic stuff. It's different for different types of traps, and we can talk about that more when we talk about traps individually. But ultimately, bottleneck those bastards. Like, get those orcs in as tightest place as possible. Make sure that you're hammering them with as many traps as you can get to target that location at once, and you will see their numbers melt very quickly. This is extremely important for traps that deal their damage in bursts. That's going to be like your spike trap, your wall blades, your auto ballistas, your swinging maces. Like, they deal damage to everything that's in their area as they trigger. And that was me missing another one. But that setup wasn't bad. It was just me not paying attention. So here we go again. This time I improve on the barricade setup by moving everything forward a bit. This forces everybody to bottleneck before they even get into what will ultimately be the kill box. And I think this was probably my best setup so far. And probably something that I'll look to improve on going into Endless, or you know, just any other time I decide to run the stage, other than, you know, maybe doing combos, because I'm not sure if that's necessarily the best way to go about it. But I haven't been labbing combos in this game. I'm really still just going through and knocking the difficult stages out one by one first, and then we'll come back and see what scoring and all that's about. But I want to sort of get the details about just how to win and why certain things work out for people that are interested first, and then we'll do all of the labbing and everything else. So you can see that the use of crowd control here sort of gets me a nice clump of orcs, and then everybody else gets sort of just dumbfounded and stuck when things in front of them get frozen. Now that happened there sort of puzzles me a little bit, and it's mainly because I'm not sure if the freeze is spherical or radial.
second, I thought about maybe possibly getting a wee bit concerned.
Like, I don't know if it's a flat circle or if it actually freezes in a sphere around the character. If it does freeze in a sphere, that's going to be interesting if they decide to add in, like, say, like flying enemies or something with an update. But at the same time, it means that barricades like they did there, or even other orc bodies, may be able to block enemies from getting frozen. So, you know, I gotta figure out exactly how that works, because there are definitely some situations where you try to freeze groups of enemies, and if they're not relatively close to you with the radial freeze, you know, the secondary ability of the ice amulet, they just don't get frozen. And, you know, you don't want to think you're going to freeze somebody and then lose because, you know, they happen to just stroll through your big ice attack. But either way, you know, I like the freeze amulet. I think a lot of people probably use it quite a bit after getting it their first play through the game. And it's a solid weapon. I think you don't want to rely on it too much. This is one of the reasons, though, that ice traps are really good in this game, because ice traps in this game seem to freeze in a single hit. They don't have the whole chill stacks thing that they had in Unchained, and that makes them a lot better at crowd control than they used to be. That, and there's a couple different ones here. You have the dart spitter, which can shoot ice, and that's probably my favorite one right now. And there's also the saw, you know, no longer the saw of Arctos, just the saw, buzzsaw trap. It's a nice trap though. Like, if you guys get the opportunity to play around with it, give it a shot. Put that ice upgrade on it and see what you think about it. But now we have pretty much everything we need here with the ice darts and just one crowd control ability on your hero. You can probably lock this up pretty good from here on out. And at this point, I was just building traps for gravy. Like, I could have either had a swinging mace up here. I start placing the Arcane auto Ballista.
Nice to meet you.
Like ceiling pounders would work here. What else? Shock zappers would also work in the area where the orcs will actually be walking through. The use of freeze abilities, specifically the ice amulet, at this point actually is probably a bad idea. I happen to, I think, just use the radial freeze out of habit more often than I should, and you know, I still managed to make par this time. But this is just something to be aware of. You don't want to get into the habit of freezing enemies whenever they're outside of your traps' damage zones. Like, you want your traps to really benefit from your use of crowd control. You don't want to just be crowd controlling things when nothing's going to happen to them, because at that point, what's the point? So that also means that you're going to want to build trap areas that can house a decent amount of orcs. And it becomes really important after you accumulate a good amount of coin, because you can do things like activate your crowd control and then pop your trap trinket, and it will activate all of your nearby traps, and you can do just big, huge amounts of damage like this. So I like that now a lot, just because of your ability to get all of your auto ballistas to sort of you know, do ranked fire on whatever big enemies are around. It just feels great seeing like 20 arrows just go straight into a heavy armored ogre and take them out immediately. But you know, certain things like that you'll have to work towards, and it feels really good when you get the payoff for it. I think that's one of the things I like about the trap trinket the most. If you build a setup that utilizes it well, when you activate it, it's just mwah, chef's kiss. It's so good, so much damage, so much carnage, so much combos. Like, everything about it is great. But you have to build it up to get it to pay off. Either way, that's going to be the 5 skulls for the Great Room. Let me know what you guys thought about this video. Feel free to drop me comments on things that you'd like to see on the channel, traps that you'd like to see used, traps that you want me to talk about, or any particular level that's giving you trouble. I can make some ways easier than the ones that I initially recorded that you'll be seeing in this series. So, you know, feel free to let me know. Either way, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, take care of yourselves, and as always, have a good one, folks. Peace.